Welcome to the HMO Property Podcast, where we connect, educate, and inspire the UK's HMO property community. So stop what you're doing, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. What's up, HMO Nation, and welcome to another episode of the HMO Property Podcast. With me, Rupert Wallace. In this episode, we're interviewing successful HMO property investor, Nick Leatherland. Nick is going to take us on his HMO property investment journey, including the ups, the downs, the highs, and the lows. Now, Nick has been investing in HMOs for some 10 years. He's completed over 60 projects, currently housing 250 tenants in 2 different locations. Now let's jump straight in. Nick, say hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hi. So Nick, before we dive into the details of your HMO journey, tell us a bit about yourself. Give us your background, everything up until the point you started investing in HMOs.
Oh, well, that's I started when I was 20, so that means I'm talking about kind of school, boring stuff like that, really. So I guess if a good starting point actually would be, say, probably when I joined the Royal Navy when I was 20. I was in the submarine service for 10 years. Well, 9 years really. Round it up to 10 because it sounds better, as you know. Makes me sound more old school. But yeah, no, whilst I was in the Navy, I was actually doing property at the same time. So the two things were running parallel. So the whole journey actually starts with my naval career and the property thing at the same time. So the bit prior to that is kind of just, it's a bit boring really. I guess I went to school. I got kicked out of school actually when I was 13, so I got home tutored. I did my GCSEs in the school just for the final year. I didn't do very well. I got a D in maths and I got an E in English, and that's all I got, 2 GCSEs. And my main passion was music, so I played drums and that's what I focused on. And when I was 16, I got offered a job in a band in Stoke-on-Trent, and that's how I kind of ended up going from Swindon, where I'm from, to Stoke-on-Trent. So from down south up north, so to speak. And yeah, so that's kind of how it all began. I was doing music; it was good. My band toured around Europe a couple of times. Our album was in HMV. We had some like minor success with playing festivals and stuff like that. And it was all a bit of a dream come true because I was like, say, 16 to sort of 19, 20 years old when I did this.
Wow, man.
Yeah, but I got disenfranchised with the whole thing. And the more I learned about the music industry, like, put it this way, I was meeting my heroes on tours in festivals. And then
who are your heroes? Tell us, buddy.
My heroes, just guys in other metal bands that I was, into basically growing up. So, for example, I played Hard Rock Hell Festival, which was the first Hard Rock Hell Festival, and it's been going on every year since. And that was ran by Metal Hammer magazine, and it was at Butlins in Minehead. And it was awesome. And the whole idea was like, Butlins closes down for winter, so why don't we put a festival on there? And it'd be aimed at the older generations. All the bands were like Saxon, Twisted Sister, all the bands from like the 80s, and they're like the heroes. Do you know what I mean? And the bass player from Iron Maiden, Steve Harris, was there because his daughter. Oh, wow. His daughter's band was playing, so he was there. You know what I mean? And it was just cool. But basically, as I met these people, I learned about the music industry more and more, and it just turned me off. It just seemed like you're not in control of anything. I didn't like that, so I got disenfranchised, and over time I started doubting it and things like that. So I kind of jumped ship basically, joined the Navy. A bit of an extreme jump, as you can imagine. Going from rock and roll lifestyle to that was really hard. But actually, something I learned about myself was that I need that structure, because since I've left the Navy and I've been able to just do what I want because I'm the director and all that kind of stuff, it's got worse. So I'm actually trying to be disciplined and bring it back and sort of get up at the same time every day, and that's been helping me massively, like, get my routine back.
You got it, man. And that's where you and I can relate to each other because we have a very similar story. We both joined the Navy. We both did property or I certainly did property as a means of escape, or maybe not as a means of escape, but, to supplement a career which I wasn't entirely sold on halfway through it. But yeah, tell us about pre, full on HMOs in the Navy, because I'm pretty sure I'll be able to pick out some great bits of your story where you and I overlapped. Like for me, it was buying one place every base I went to, and for you, was it something similar? How did you do it?
Um, I think that when I looked at what the options were for the Navy, the submarine service was like the one where you got paid the most money, and without sounding like with like just a money grabbing person, that's what basically got me engaged with that career, and the whole point of doing it was to buy houses. So I was volunteering for deployments left, right, and centre, and I was doing loads of sea time, and I was earning loads of money. And I was like 20 years old. I was taking home like quite a bit of dosh, and it was just going into the savings because I couldn't spend it when I was on deployment. I was underwater for 3 or 4 months at a time with no contact with the outside world, no sunlight, working 6 hours on, 6 hours off shifts for the whole period. And so I come back to a big pot of cash, and guess what? Instead of spending it on crap like my shipmates did, I go and put a deposit down on a house. And I guess the kind of bit from like being in a band to joining the Navy, that little bit there, I could have moved somewhere else, like back to Swindon, for example. The music thing was done, all the family were back there. But I joined the Navy, so it was kind of exciting. Like I could go live anywhere I want. I could just uproot now, and I chose Stoke-on-Trent because the houses were so good. And it was a very simple thing of parents going on about buying a house all the time growing up. It's the most important thing ever. Probably seeing my mum and dad doing stuff as well, like a couple flips here and there. So I kind of knew a little bit about it growing up, and then joining the Navy and actually visiting some friends back home in Swindon and realising one of them was renting a house for like £500, and it was a 3-bedroom house in Swindon. And I also had a friend in Stoke-on-Trent who was renting a pretty much identical house for similar money, actually, about £400 a month. But the house my friend in Stoke was living in cost £60,000, and the house in Swindon was like £160,000. So I'm sitting there going, shit, you could buy 3 of these in Stoke-on-Trent. Like, why would you buy one in, and this was like really primitive, basic, like thought process at the time.
Yeah.
And as I delved into it more and more, I discovered all, like capital appreciation differences, and it's not just about cash flow and blah, blah, blah. But that was the basics kind of like got in my head at the time. That gave me the spark, I guess. Oh, this, why would I'll buy them in Stoke-on-Trent? That makes sense. Yeah. And then I'm living there, and now I'm here still, basically.
I don't know about you, but I was always a bit amazed that my contemporaries in the military, in the Navy, weren't on the same mindset of me of looking outside the wire, in terms of what the opportunities were. And I don't just mean financially, but first and foremost financially. Did you find that any of your guys wanted to get involved at those early stages? Like, I mean, I felt pretty alone.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. I mean, so one of the things that basically jarred me in that property direction when I joined the Navy was meeting somebody called can I swear on this?
You already have, buddy.
Okay, well, it's a really bad word, so I won't say it. But his name was TCC, which was that C. Kearns.
Yeah, okay, understood. We'll leave that one out.
The middle bit is the obvious swear word. So that was his nickname, TCC. Everyone called him TCC. Uh-huh. And he was a petty officer, which is like a sergeant in the army style thing for those listening or watching who don't really know what a petty officer is. It's like a sergeant equivalent. So he rocks up to the training base, and I'm there to attention. And I'm like, I've been in the Navy for like 2 weeks at this point. I'm totally brand new. And he comes walking in, and he's all suave, and he's like, yeah, my name's Jimmy Kearns. I'm from Scotland. I'm from Glasgow. I've got 10 houses. I'm a millionaire on paper. I'm 38 years old. I've got 2 years left of my career, and I've done 22 years. I've got a big fat pension. I'm single. I've got no kids. I've got a nice car and designer clothes. And I thought, this guy is amazing. I want to be like him. Like 20 years old. I never had any money because I was always scratching around doing music stuff. And all my money went into buying drum kit stuff, replacement drum heads and cymbals. That crap. Do you know what I mean? So for years, I was like starved of money. And I met this guy who was just flash and cool. and confident, and I thought, like, I want to be him. Funnily enough, I actually some years later ended up working with him, which is a cool story because I went away and did the property thing, and then saw him some years later and told him what I'd been doing, and he was like, "What?" kind of thing. So yeah, he gave me the push in that direction, the inspiration, and then the spark bit. Speaking to a friend back home and a friend here who were both renting, that was kind of in the parents' influence, all kind of drove me in that property direction.
Yeah.
So the next step was just going on forums and researching. But anyway, going back to the actual question, sorry, I just realised I massively diverted. There was people in the Navy who I told them what I was doing, and I'd spend a lot of time with these people on deployments, like proper brothers, and they would all agree and say it's a great idea, but they'd all make excuses. There's always BS excuses, and and they would all be like, yeah, it is a good idea, yeah, I should do that. And some people didn't even believe me. Some people thought I was just talking complete bollocks,
Yeah, I hear you.
Years and years, people were just like, he's full of shit, Nick is. And then it wasn't until I left and sort of thing, people realised that I wasn't bullshitting. And I was there to help any of them anytime I wanted it. And there was only one person who actually stepped forward, and that's a guy called Liam, who's on deployment at the minute, actually. And I've helped him buy 2 houses now, and he's got his own house that he lives in Scotland, so he's got 3. And
fantastic.
He's like 26, so he's doing all right,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's on my radar to figure out a way how to get those guys educated and involved properly, rather than missold some terrible 5% down product in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, Nick, how did you actually get into the world of HMO property investing specifically?
Okay, so my mum has worked for the NHS her whole life, since she left school up until she retired, actually, not long ago. So she's worked for NHS her whole life. And we've always lived near kind of hospitals. And as a result, there's always been those sort of HMO communities near the hospitals anyway. It's kind of a thing, like if you live near a hospital, chances are 2 doors down is like a house share for the nurses and the doctors. And it was all cool because they're nurses and doctors, everyone loves them, and so there was never any like, oh, HMO, kind of attitude, like, oh, we've got immigrants moving in. It was all, you know what I mean? That's what you get here in Stoke-on-Trent, unfortunately.
Of course.
So really ignorant people. But anyway, and so yeah, that was the done thing. So naturally, when I did buy my first property, as an investment, I bought it in the hospital region, and I split the rooms up and I let the rooms out, and you had to furnish them. I went a step beyond and dressed the rooms. That was like when I first started discovering, like, making them look a bit better than the competition, which really wasn't very hard. And I was charging a lot more money. And the thing was that I was getting all these really great tenants who are like on 100 grand a year doctor brain surgeons living in my, do you know what I mean? And they're living in my little 60 grand house, but it looks really nice inside and And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I remember thinking, like, any other way would be stupid. Like, why would I rent this out to one person for £500 a month when I was renting each room for £380? It was free with a shared bathroom. And my mortgage was like ridiculously cheap. It was like £120 a month, interest only. You know what I mean? And the cash flow was great. And so I just multiplied that, basically, mini HMO model. I didn't know there was names for it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about regulations.
You were just doing it.
I was just totally blagging it, yeah. And going on the internet and learning as much as I could.
Good. Was anything holding you back, Nick, from getting into HMOs?
No, not at all. It was very simple. It was just I knew where to do it because I lived there. I had the inner knowledge from my mum working for the NHS, and so it was kind of just it was very simple, almost like like a rehearsed process that I went through, where it was all like set out for me that this would be my path. There was no accidental like moment of eureka or something like that. It was just a very slow, natural progression towards this path through many influences, I guess.
Brilliant.
I guess there's a little bit of, just like to go further onto that, a bit of I was a bit of a wheeler dealer growing up, or whatever you want to call it. People say entrepreneur and things like that, but I don't feel comfortable with that word because I think it sounds a bit whatever. But I like to just think I wanted money growing up, and we didn't have a lot of money, and we lived in a bad part of part of the town, and it was pretty tough, like single mum upbringing. Dad was doing his thing. He was running his business, which was quite successful. So it's a bit of a rich dad, poor dad theme going on with like two parents. One's working their ass off their whole life for a pension, and the other one, my dad, who's actually started his own business. So I kind of get in those two flavours, you know, and I'm growing up with it. And my dad's kind of like, look, if you want pocket money, go cut the grass. So I'll be cutting the grass and he'll give me £5. And I'll be thinking, man, if I get some Pokemon cards off Jeremy down the road and sell them in school because they're really popular right now, I'd make £20. Why would I cut the grass in for an hour in sweat when I could do that? So I was already looking for the lazy option to make more money, you know, which is what I like to call it. I'm like the lazy, like, what's the easiest way to do it? Like, what's cut out all the BS? What's just the easy way to make the money, you know? And so that's my kind of mentality. And I've had that since a child, I guess. So yeah, I kind of had that little bit of thing in there with me anyway, growing up. Yeah. So as an adult, when I kind of let that go into business, it just, you know, stood me in good stead.
The thing is, once you let that creativity run, you're always coming up with the next idea. So you're absolutely right in terms of, and I can relate to it. You do need the structure, you need the partnership, you need the structure in some way to keep you on the road, because I'm sure you could come up with 10 ideas a week. But ideas.
I could just give like a piece of advice right now, which would be just like dead simple. Is like, if you can create a business, yeah, and then create multiple businesses around that business where they all relate. That's how we've done it. You know, we've created, you know, starting at the beginning, a sourcing company, developing into project management and construction, into lettings and sales on the end. So the whole start to finish kind of product, you know, and that's the bit, which is the main bit, right? And then the other bits we've added on around it are things like Unity Project, where we run groups with property developers and we make an income off that, and furnishing and dressing the properties for the clients, we make a bit off that, and blah blah blah. And so that's, and they're easy wins, because it's just like, well, we're doing a HMO up for somebody, why don't we do the lettings when it's finished? Why don't we furnish it and dress it for them? You know, and you can go further with that if you wanted to, and you can supply all the utilities for the properties for the clients and guarantee them a fixed thing per month outgoing on the bills. And some months you lose because the gas was too high, and some months you win and you keep the difference. And you know, you can go way, you know, it depends how far you want to go with that. You could offer insurance to people, because all the landlords need insurance. You can mortgage brokers, you can team up with them. You know, it goes on and on, like, so. So if you want to build an empire and make lots of money, just do that. Basically, get one thing you're good at and then build around it.
Build around it.
A client base now, so you just build around it and sell more things to that client base. Job done.
Love it, love it, love it. Just want to go back a little step. Something that you touched on. I really want. I want you to tell us about you, and you touched on it already in the student area of. I'm not sure if it was Stoke, but I want your first HMO property deal. I want the location, I want the tenant profile, I want the price, all the key numbers. Give us the good stuff on your first HMO property deal.
Okay, so I joined the Navy in 08. So I bought my first property in early 09, and it was in Stoke-on-Trent. It was near the hospital. It was within 0.25 miles of the hospital, on a street called Newcastle Lane, and that was the first house I bought. It cost me £75,000. I renovated it for about 10k, because I did a lot of the work myself whilst I was on leave, so I kept the overheads really low. I actually then remortgaged it for 100k.
Brilliant.
You know, after 6 months or whatever. So that was the kind of first deal. It was 3 bedrooms. So upstairs, it was a 2-bed house basically. Up, you know, 2 up, 2 down, mid-terrace Victorian property. You walked into an open plan kind of lounge kitchen, and you went up the stairs to 2 bedrooms. And so I actually put the walls back in that they would have taken out to make it so that I could get a downstairs bedroom. So you walked into the lounge, and then you had the hallway going through to the kitchen and bathroom at the back, with the bedroom on the left there. And yeah, I rented each room out for 380 quid, all bills included. I'd have to do the maths like quickly, but yeah, it was pretty good cash flow. I'm sure
that's good.
A good £500 a month cash flow off that one property.
Excellent. Sounds like a good deal. And do you still have it now, 10 years on?
No, I sold it.
Sold that one?
Yeah, so I actually sold it because So my theory back then was that I prefer to have a smaller portfolio of properties that are more cash flow based than to have a large portfolio of properties where they're lower cash flow and you end up with tons of properties and you got loads of headaches and liabilities. And that was kind of my theory at the time, which has evolved since then. And since I sold the house off actually, and I changed my strategy, my strategy and mindset's changed again since then. And actually I realised that trying to sell a 6-bed all-en-suite HMO is going to be way harder than trying to sell a 2-up, 2-down mid-terrace house that you converted. And therefore, and I didn't take those things into account at the time when I made my decisions. And so you're always evolving, and I'd never stick by one thing. I'll always say to people, like, this is what I think right now, until I've been enlightened further, then I will probably change my mind in opinion. So I try to keep my opinions a little bit to myself these days. I'm not known for that. I'm generally known for being like this all the time. But actually these days I am trying to keep my opinions to myself a little bit more, just because I've realised how many people listen, and I need to be careful with what I say. With things like predictions and strategies that I use might not work for you, for example. So I have to stick the disclaimers in there now. I'm kind of having to relearn that as a person. So that's been interesting.
Right. Well, there's only one constant in life, isn't there? And that's change. So if people can't get their head,
it's you're done, like, and that's like with this, people say expert, they're an expert, whatever. I try not to use that word, because it's like what makes me qualified to sit here on this podcast and talk to people that are watching this about HMOs? Is it the numbers? Is it, I could sit here and be fluffy and say we've done all these millions of pounds worth of deals and make myself sound amazing, but I don't need to. Just basically, I do videos on YouTube. Check them out. All the content's on there. Sorry, not to bring people away from you, but no, that's what I'm saying. It's just, I'm just real, no BS. I just tell it how it is. And some people don't like that, and they call you up for it, and they get a problem with you over it. So I just try to these days just be, better.
I mean, again, I think what you're taking into your investing career is something that we got taught in the military, and that was that thing called integrity. Sadly, the property industry, there are a lot of people out there that talk a lot and do very little. But I agree with you, and it's all about being real. Nick, tell me in one paragraph how HMO investing has changed your life.
So it gave me amazing income for a start. I was in my mid-20s, and I was like, you could consider yourself financially free, I guess. Although that's an interesting word in itself, and we could talk about that all day. But in short, I replaced my income that at the time was good for me at that age in my lifestyle, and it ticked all the boxes. So HMOs basically gave me the freedom to quit my career. It took me a bit longer to get out than I anticipated. I wanted to do 5 years and go, and I hit my target of 5 years, but I also got promoted, and it sort of threw a spanner in the works, and it sort of, caused some doubts or whatever. And so I hung on for a bit longer and secured my financial freedom even more, which is fine. But I really regret not leaving sooner, because the things that I learned when I did leave was like, wow, and do you know what I mean? So I regret that a little bit, maybe not just jumping quicker into it. And like I said earlier about giving bad advice, you really have to bear in mind that if you do quit your career, lending becomes a lot harder. You have to take those things into account. Little disclaimer there for you. So yeah, I guess the paragraph would be, HMOs gave me financial freedom. They gave me the freedom to do what I want. I pretty much do what I want now. Pretty happy. And so HMOs are pretty awesome. However, they don't work everywhere. You have to pick and choose your strategies. You
have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Nick, what's your favourite part of HMO property investing?
Everyone's got different parts, haven't they, and different skill sets. And I guess, like, some people get really excited over like finding the deal. Some people get really excited over creatively structuring the finance on the deal, and they get really excited. Look how I structured this deal, Nick. I've done it with this JV here, and I'm pulling this money from there, and it's proper, like, and it's like, wow, yeah, that is creative, So some people get kicks out of that. My bit is probably when the product's finished, and that's where I am now. I'm in a HMO that I've invested in furnishing today, because that's what I do. dressing it, furnishing it. I've got all my camera gear with me. I'm going to do some nice photos of this property when I'm done. And we get them online and we get the rooms let out. And it's that bit at the end where I'm probably editing the photos on my laptop of like, you know, the done product, and I can see all the love and passion that's gone into it, you know, and the story behind every project. And every project's been interesting, and we've learned things in different ways about ourselves and being more professional and running the company better. So that's my favourite bit. It's probably, I'll say, like the design phase, and probably the finished product bit where you just walk around and just feel like proud.
Making it sing, making it look like an incredible thing that you're proud of, yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. Nick, we've talked about your past, and before we move on to the present and your future plans in HMO property, let's take a minute to thank our sponsors.
Are you looking for an effortless HMO mortgage experience? If that's a yes, there's only one place to go: www.thehmomortgagebroker.co.uk, the UK's #1 specialist HMO mortgage broker. They're so specialised that they don't do anything else. HMO mortgages, HMO remortgages, and HMO bridging. That's it. They have access to every HMO lender out there, and even some exclusive products not available to other brokers. With lightning fast service and A1 communication, they're easily the best HMO broker in town. So to experience HMO lending made easy, go to www.thehmomortgagebroker.co.uk today.
Cool. Nick, fast forwarding to the present day, tell us about your current HMO portfolio.
So, I mean, since I left the Navy and started Pegasus Property with John Polclough, my business partner, you know, I've not bought any property for my personal self. You know, me and John made a conscious decision that we would go into business. You know, you can do it two ways. You can either go in married, where you don't sleep around, or you can go in where you can sleep around. But if you do sleep around, you need to have strict rules on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. For example, you know, me and John do property together. But in 5 years, I might go, hey, John, I want to start doing some barber shops because I'm really into that, you know. And he might go, well, that's kind of property because you need to have the real estate and stuff. And so it gets clouded at that point. And so, do you know what I mean? But we've decided from the word go, we wouldn't have that like cloudiness. We would just go, it's simple. You and me are business partners for life. We're bros, 50-50 down the middle, no BS. You know, let's buy property, let's do this, let's make this magic happen. And let's own a portfolio of businesses together, yeah, and property. And that was it. So we started a business like that, no sleeping around, and that works well. So Pegasus Property right now, buying wise, like I say, I've not bought any more properties for myself personally. What we have bought and what I own since I started Pegasus Property, I've got 2 buy-to-lets. We've got 1 commercial premises that we're converting into about 4 apartments. We've got a pub that we converted into 9 apartments worth £525,000. That's just for
right.
All money out, etc. We've got a nightclub. We're converting that into a 22-unit project, which would be a mixture of HMOs and apartments, and that's going to be worth estimated £1.3 million when it's finished. So in total, my portfolio would be whatever, you know, when that project's finished. Yeah, and that's it really. It's all a bit irrelevant when people say how many units they've got or properties. It's like doesn't matter, because my 3-bed HMO might cash flow better than that thing over there, and your 6-bed might cash flow better. And so it's all about kind of like the bottom. It's I struggle to explain, but like your numbers need to be right on the deal, and the bottom line needs to be right to make the deal work, obviously. But there's all these other factors you have to take into account with HMOs that you wouldn't take into account with buy-to-lets necessarily, or flats or new builds, etc. They've all got their own little things, haven't they? In HMOs, super area based, like geographical location is key, and the product is key, and the management is key, and so there's a lot more to it. All of a sudden, it becomes a totally new beast, and you've got to be careful not to let it overwhelm you, because it can become overwhelming. And I think that's one of my little things that I probably carried over from the Navy, was that, you know, whilst I was in the Navy and I was going away at sea on deployments, somebody had to manage my properties, like he was managing them, you know, and I recruited somebody and trained them and taught them, and I created all the systems. and the systems were maybe influenced a little bit from stuff I read online, maybe other people's ideas I had myself. I don't really know, and it kind of all got amalgamated in this mishmash into my system that worked for me. And that worked fine for quite a few years until I met John, and that person I recruited was like, this is turning into a full-time job and I'm not really interested. So they went off and did their own thing, and John stepped in with Jodie, his girlfriend, and they were managing my portfolio, and that's how we became friends and then started business together. HMOs are very area dependent. So, Pegasus Property, HMO wise, we bought a couple of buy-to-lets and done some flips, and we've done commercial to residential conversions into flats, as I say. But HMO wise, other than the nightclub that we're converting into 22 units of HMOs and apartments, we haven't bought any HMOs for ourselves. They've all been for our clients.
Okay, so tell me about the best HMO investment you've made to date, either for you or one of the clients that you work with.
I'll talk about the nightclub one because that's easily the best. So the story behind that one, it's called Harry's Bar, and it's opposite Minster's Church. Minster's Church is Stoke-on-Trent doesn't have a cathedral, but if it did, that would be considered the one, I guess. That's in Stoke Town. And the street's beautiful, and there's a big Georgian building next door, which is the council headquarters. 100 space car park behind the building, right in town centre. Supposed to be building HS2 next to it, which is by the train station. So we're by the train station anyway, bus station. Anyway, so good location. By the university, good location, right? So I was driving through town and I saw them putting the sign up saying it was for sale, and this was like on a Saturday, and I was like, hey, that's going for sale, no way, and we'd already bought a project further down the street, and we also had a 9-bed HMO around the corner, which was performing super well. So we're very interested in that area because we had the data to, it was driven by the data that we had. We knew it would work. So we literally called the commercial estate agent there and then saying, I've seen the sign going up, and I did some quick maths on it and concluded it would be a good deal. And those quick maths that I did were getting the total floor space of the building. Once I had the total floor space of the building, I could then work backwards from that. I could divide that number by the approximate space that HMO room with a bit of communal space, etc. would be, and I did that by I'd get like a 6-bed HMO, get the total floor space divided by 6, and so I'd go, oh yeah, so this all makes sense. A HMO room is probably about like 25 square meters approximately. All in, you know what I mean, for a nice size room and an ensuite and a bit of kitchen and a bit of lounge and a bit of a hallway. Blah, blah, blah. Sure. So I divided the total floor space by 25, and I got 32. So I thought, wow, 32-bed HMO, wicked. Let's do a quick commercial valuation on that. So 32 rooms times £400 a month, just keep it conservative, probably get 450 there. Times that by 12, so that's the gross rental income per annum. Multiply that by 7.5, which, by the way, you normally minus 25% and then multiply by 10 or whatever the yield number is. Ours is 10, but you could just multiply by 7.5 because it's the same maths.
It's the same whichever way. Yeah, everyone gets confused by it.
I just want to say that because some people go, oh,
no,
minus 20, and then so anyway. And the GDV was there. What the gross development value when the project was finished was there. So I've got how many rooms am I going to get? The net, the rental income, the GDV. Now I need the cost to convert the project from this old shitty nightclub into a beautiful building. And I did that by multiplying the total floor space by an average conversion cost for a project. And as we'd already done quite a few projects, we knew the average cost per square metre to do, say, a HMO, a buy-to-let, a flip, commercial to residential conversion, etc. So these were just really rough figures at the time that I did in about 2 minutes whilst I'm sitting in the car watching them put the sign up, and the maths works out. So I called John excitedly, told him about it, showed him the maths. He says, yeah, I agree with those numbers. We've called the agent, we've viewed it same day when they're normally closed on weekends. He's come out just for us, and we secured it subject to planning permission at 230k. It was on for 250, so we got 20k off and subject to planning, which is quite good, I think. So
how many square feet was it, Nick?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It was in meters. I don't use feet.
Okay.
That's a bit draconian. So I'm using meters like everybody else in the world. So I'm joking, dude. I could tell you, but I need to get a calculator. Okay. Do 32 times 25, and that would give you an approximate size of the building.
6,000 square feet, 600 square meters.
Yeah, so that's about it. So if you multiply that by
800
cost, if you multiply that by the conversion cost of about £750 a square meter, which is what we paid for our pub conversion, you know, it should be like 400k, kind of 500k area, I think, off the top of my head. So those are the quick maths. Anyway, once the deal's secured, what we do next is we get some of those boxes ticked a bit better. You know, we rub the pencil out and put a pen mark. Things like how many rooms are we going to get? Architect comes in. He goes, oh, that was good maths, guys. I've managed to fit 32 rooms in this building, and it's all to regs. Great. You know,
would you believe that?
Yeah, would you believe that? So we've gone to planning, and they've knocked it back and said no. Too many rooms, just too much overdevelopment, basically. The council really don't like us, and that's a whole story in itself.
Okay.
Maybe for another time, unless you got time, but it's a funny one. But anyway, the council don't like us. Yeah, they don't like HMOs, and they just think we do like scummy HMOs, which we don't, and we've shown it many times, but they just don't listen. So they knocked it back. They said they didn't want residential on the ground floor at the front because it was commercial. They want more commercial buildings in Stoke-on-Trent to get more shops in, so they get more footfall. And that's their theory, as opposed to the other way around, which would be getting residents to live in the town centres and stuff. He goes into town centres from outside town centre to shop anymore. So you need more people in the town centres, and they don't think that way. They think the other way. So they're stupid. So they said no, and I'm pissed off, obviously, about this. What do I do? And we've had some good back and forth with the planning. You know, the head of planning or whatever, I can't remember his name. John was doing this, so he's having back and forth. He builds a good rapport with this guy. And we've actually got applications in for a few other projects. So, you know, we get a good rapport, and he kind of goes, look, guys, if you put it in again for like this many units, it will go through. So we've gone, okay, so we've redone the maths and, you know, put it in and it gets approved. So that's the big tick in the box. First of all, how many actual units are we going to get in there?
Great.
In meantime, whilst we're waiting for that, we're getting quantity survey reports to back up the construction cost, you know, and all those things follow. You know, when you put planning in, they want you to do tons of surveys. It costs about 10 to 15k to put planning into a project like that, which might get refused. That's the danger money bit. We call it the danger money. So anyway, as this misty project becomes more clear with the various surveys and stuff, the investment becomes de-risked as a result. So for us to then go to a lender or JV partner or whatever and say, here's the numbers and here's the proof to back it up. You know, the only risk now is, you know, in the construction process, really, there's something going wrong there or the market changing during the meantime. So, you know, other than that, it's all pretty good.
Great. So is this a project that's still ongoing for you, Nick?
Literally just starting, yeah.
Okay, so give the audience some numbers. You bought it for 230. You spent some money on planning. What's it worth with planning? What's the cost of conversion? And what's the GDV? And what's the likely cash flow at the end? We're trying to make this a bit real for people to show them that these kind of deals do exist. They are out there and they are worth chasing.
Sure. So we secured it for 230. That went up to 250 because of the delays in planning. And we renegotiated, so that was fine. So it cost us another 20k. We had 32 rooms and that changed to 22. However, 18 of those are HMO rooms and 2 are apartments. And we could potentially make the apartments 2-bed apartments, therefore springboarding it up quite a bit. Also, once you get planning approved, it's actually quite easy to go back and challenge certain things. So we anticipate we will get a lot more units out of it. But just based on current units that have been approved, because that's all we can go on, because the rest is just, you know, whatever. You know, the GDV with planning is 380 to 380,000 pound of planning in place. So we could sell that right now, put it to sell it for 380. You know, the GDV of it once completed, which is obviously like an estimate, but from, you know, it's a red book survey from a RICS valuer, which cost us £3,000, which was a lot of money, I thought. Anyway, he comes back with 1.26 million as his GDV.
Right.
So it's kind of around that region. However, when you start, like I say, messing around with the numbers a little bit and going, well, actually we can do 2-bed flats, and then that means that the GDP goes up quite a bit more, up to about 1.6. There's a big, yeah, so there's a big difference. So that's some numbers for you. So we're going to have 18-bed HMO and 4 apartments. Cash flow wise, it should be around 120k a year gross income. By the time you've refinanced it and pulled all your cash out on the end and paying your huge mortgage, you should be getting about 60 grand a year net.
Great.
Realistic,
great project.
Super conservative. That's like, very, very conservative numbers. The conversion cost is 550k.
Got it.
So I've got that bit. So the conversion cost is 550. So it's more than we thought it would be. And the number of units we got was also down. So actually it was like, not great at the time. Like, this conversion cost is way higher than we thought. And, the number of units we're going to get is way lower than we thought. And there was many things where we kind of thought about walking away from the deal, but we kept crunching the numbers, and we kept crunching the numbers, and things like HS2 was announced, and they moved the university from Stafford to Stoke, and, another 3,000 students and all this. And we were just like, yeah, let's do it.
Win. Good. Love that story. Thanks for that, Nick. Next up, give us one significant mistake that you've made in your HMO business that, by sharing with the audience, you think you might be able to help others avoid.
I've made lots of mistakes, so it's really difficult. I think people make mistakes and they get kind of thrown to the lions a little bit. And actually, it's pretty normal to make mistakes. In fact, how do you learn unless you actually do it wrong? And so the mistakes I've made, it's always been about, if you make a mistake, how do you fix the problem at the end? That's what it comes down to, the integrity thing, like you said. Like, nobody goes out to rip somebody off, but things do go wrong sometimes, and so you learn from that and readjust. So mistakes probably include things like, getting numbers wrong on deals. That's quite common. There's you can fine tune the numbers to a certain degree, but kind of where do you draw the line?
But is any one mistake in your HMO specific journey you thought, like, do you know what? I'd definitely do that again differently next time?
I find it really difficult to think of just one thing.
Okay.
Let me. Can I get back to you on that one?
Yeah, sure thing.
I'll think about it whilst we're talking.
Okay. Next up, we've got two questions. One's about your portfolio, and one's about outside growing your own portfolio. So your HMO portfolio plans for the next 12 months. Have you got any?
Yeah. So it's like, other than doing obviously Harry's Bar HMO project, which is going to be one of the biggest HMOs in the city and owned by, Pegasus sort of thing, speaks for itself about our belief in HMO as a strategy. But I'm not going to go out and buy loads of mini HMOs or medium-sized HMOs like everybody else, because, I'm aware that there's all these strategies around me that I can deploy, and what I want to achieve is different to a lot of other people. What people just want cash flow very quickly so they can quit their jobs and that kind of stuff. And that's not really my interest. I'm interested in building a really sustainable portfolio that's going to stand the test of time and not go under if there's a crash. And I want to be here sort of how old am I? 30, so probably about 50-ish years later, with a portfolio.
Still want to be in Stoke?
Yeah, I mean, not Stoke-on-Trent, but the county itself, Staffordshire in Cheshire, like, in the Peak Districts next to us. I tell you, Stoke's a great place, mate. To people who are lovely.
It is. I agree.
There's many commercial buildings that are sat empty. It's a real playground for property developers.
Great. Glad to hear it. Okay, so no big portfolio plans for you for the 12 months. What about anything outside building your portfolio? Is there anything else you're up to in property, like Unity, for example, that you might want to share that you think will be useful for HMO Nation listening?
Yeah, so I mean, because this is very HMO specific, I'm trying not to go too much into other property related things.
And I appreciate that.
So, the previous question about building a HMO portfolio, no, but portfolio, yeah. But buy-to-lets and flips in commercial to residential into flats and things of that nature. That's what I'm going for. Rather than HMO, because I've got my cash flow sorted. I don't need more HMOs. You know what I mean? So that's the way I think of it. You need to diversify, of course. So what was the next question? Outside of portfolio?
Outside of your HMO portfolio, what are you up to in the next 12 months?
But in property.
In property, yeah.
In property. Okay, so Unity projects, like what was mentioned earlier,
Tell us about it.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
tell us about it.
Sure. So, I don't want to do a sales pitch or anything. It's like basically there was a lot of bullshit groups in property and a lot of people running them that I thought were knobheads and they shouldn't be running groups like that. And I could see how they were monetizing it. They were getting newbies in and then they were selling them a dream, and I just thought it was wrong. It's not that simple. There's many things that you can do that can screw it up. And you need to be capable as a person to be able to do some of these strategies. Not all of them, but some of them are tough. You need to know what you're doing a little bit. You need to educate yourself. So these people are going to educate themselves as you do, and they're being led down a path that I would disagree with, basically. So I kind of decided to start my own group, and that was Unity. And that came from a few different ideas, I guess, in Eureka moment or whatever. But it was really scary actually starting the group, because I was like, what happens if nobody wants to be in the group? What happens if I start it and it's a fail? And everyone's like, oh, look at Nick Leatherland, you can't even start a little group, what a dickhead. And all those kind of things. And those self-doubts that you have. And I was like, no, man, this is going to work. So, I went to my low-hanging fruit, easy pickings, people that I know in property. Do you want to be in my Unity group? It's only like, it's really discounted for the first month. And and they're kind of like, why would I pay money to, why would I be in your group? And I'm like, kind of thing. And so I'm going back to the drawing board and I'm like, why would people want to be in my group? And I realized the unique selling point of the group was basically safety. Like, you can join my group and you're in safe hands. Like, everybody in the group gets looked into. Anyone that joins the group that's got a shady history gets when it comes to light, and things like that. We don't allow sharks, we don't allow sales, we don't allow many things. There's a lot of rules, but basically it's just fun. And there's such a wide, vast array of people in the group. You've got people who are just starting out, and you've got people with multi-million pound portfolios that live abroad, and they're international investors, and they're looking for the next up and coming developer that they can back and stuff. So it's a really cool place, man. There's a lot of flavors going on in there, and it's a real mixing pot of strategies, people in backgrounds, and it literally doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. You join that group and you got something. We've got somebody that's video production for a living. He wants to get into property. He joins the group. Guess what? Everyone there wants to do YouTube channels. So he's like, so busy now. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of cool like that. But yeah, basically it's on WhatsApp, it's on Facebook. We meet up once a month. Every month when we meet up, we have guest speakers that come in and deliver keynotes to the group. We've got people like Mark Homer lined up. He's speaking to us exclusively because he owes me one from some years ago. So I called in that favour. And there's only 50 people in the group and only about 30 turn up to a meeting. So Mark Homer's going to be talking to a room of 30 people, which is quite rare. So yeah, it's kind of cool. We do deal clinics, we do webinars, we've got loads of online stuff. It's crazy. There's just a lot going on. It's really fun, like I say. And everyone there's just growing together and helping each other out.
Perfect. All about the community.
Property's lonely, so don't be lonely. Join Unity community. Simple.
Yeah. Good tagline. Okay, right. We're coming towards the end. Any advice you'd give current HMO investors?
You want to really learn about something called market positioning, and you may already know that term. Or be thinking, Nick, what are you on about? That's basic, but a lot of people don't know about market positioning and what that entails. And simply put, when I explain this to people who don't quite know what I mean, I use supermarkets as an example. In the middle you've got Asda and you've got Tesco's and Sainsbury's, and they're just sat in the middle of the market. Who's on the fringes? You've got Lidl and Aldi, and they're like they're the value end of the market. And then up the other end, what have you got? You've got the exclusive stuff. You've got Waitrose, you've got Marks and Spencers. But guess what? All the food's grown in the same bloody place. It's just packaged differently when it gets to you. So it's complete nonsense. But that's market positioning. Do you think Aldi, if they wanted to, could flip over to the other side and go exclusive and expensive? Like, maybe not right now because they've got that brand going now, but when they started, they could have gone that way instead. And Aldi right now could be this exclusive high-end brand. So that's market positioning, right? And the psychology behind market positioning is very important, because the reason they're doing that is to engage a certain audience and that's the audience they've decided to go for. They've decided to go for students. They've decided to go for working professionals in HMOs. They decided to go for DSS, and stuff. And that's market positioning. When you look at your HMOs and you look at the product that you're delivering, because it is a product, think of how you're going to put that in front of your target audience. Think of, is there a target audience there that I've not tapped into yet? And who are they? And who would they be? And how would I do that with my product? And also consider what the other people are doing around you. So, for example, Audi, who do cars, they've got an R8 sports car and they've got an A1. Do you know what I mean? But they're both Audi, and people buy an A1 Audi because it's got the badge on it. Okay, you can do the same in property. Pegasus Property has all these high-end en-suite HMOs, and that's the exclusive Waitrose R8 stuff, And then we've got these A1 Audi bedrooms here, and they both look the same. They're both done the same by the same builders with the same finish, same furniture, same management company. What's the difference? Well, this one's got en suites and it's got the bells and whistles. This one's got shared bathrooms. But they're both Pegasus. And so what does that mean? That means that we've got entry level products here, which are just swallowing up that end of the market from all the competition. And we've got the high end product here swallowing up all that competition. So what you end up with is everyone gets pushed into the middle, which is Tesco's, Asda, and Sainsbury's, which are the boring, stuff, And that's market positioning. And guess what? Waitrose and Aldi are kicking ass. so there's some things there. Market positioning is a very interesting subject, and that would be my advice to people out there. Look into that and really consider it.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Important going forward as it gets more competition, saturation, as people like to say. You need to up your game, and you're going to do that through market positioning.
Yeah, you need to differentiate is the word. Next question. How about any advice you'd like to give to anyone who's looking to get into HMO property investing?
Everything costs a lot more than you think. Maintenance costs a lot more than you think. HMO, they also say high maintenance operation. Seriously, things go wrong left, right, and centre. When you get a property and you chuck 6 people in it instead of having one family, guess what happens? Everything breaks constantly. So you really need to do your product with longevity and simplicity. Don't overcomplicate it. So my advice to people is just really do your numbers, really drill into your numbers, and be conservative, very, very conservative with HMO numbers. Don't polish the numbers to make a deal where you're asking for disaster.
We've all been guilty of that at one point or another.
We'll do it, mate. We'll what happens if I make the rent a bit more, because I might get an extra 50 quid if they're really, really nice rooms, and then the build costs more, and then you've got no money at the end to dress it, so they look shit, and then you don't get what you thought, and that's what happens.
Well, Nick, finally, before we sign off, we'd like you to recommend one great HMO resource or book that you'd like to share. Then let HMO Nation know how they can get in touch with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Cool. So, I give a shout out to my boy, Julian Maurice. He's a great guy. He does interior design for HMOs. That's his thing that he's known for in the industry. He's really good at it. He's good at it because he's a builder by trade. So he comes from a builder background to doing design stuff as well. So he does it in a nice, easy, transitional, layman's terms, normal people who've got no taste in art whatsoever or colours could literally pick up this book and go, right, the book tells me to match these colours together because they work, and it tells you how. It's dead easy. So it is his interior design manual. I'd recommend highly to people. The course that he runs, the workshop's very good. And there's no, I don't get any kickbacks, by the way, or referrals. I've been on courses and I've read books and I've done, and his is good, very good.
Great. And how about a way that HMO Nation can get in touch with you if they want to, Nick?
Sure. So my Pegasus website is pegasuspg.com. It's like Pegasus Property Group. pegasuspg.com. If you go onto YouTube, we've got a YouTube channel. Just search Nick Leatherland or Pegasus Property, we'll come up. And then Unity Community is unitycommunity.co.uk. That's it.
Excellent. Okay, Nick, thanks for sharing your journey. We salute you. Let's get an HMO high five, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed this and want more informational, educational and inspirational HMO property content, then please hit the subscribe button and give us a like. See you next time.